It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Thanks for joining us, my friends. Don't forget May 15th. Folks, this is so important that you vote. This is a critical year, a very critical year, I don't have to tell you. And there are many people who are qualified running for office. You need to know who they are. One of those people who are running is Joe Peters. Joe is running in the 8th Congressional District, and he's no stranger to anyone here in northeastern Pennsylvania. He's here on the show today to talk about what he wants to bring to the table. Joe, it's nice seeing you again.
Sam, good to be with you.
Okay, nice to see you. Dad's doing okay?
Thank God for asking. He's doing well.
And your mom's lovely as ever, huh?
So kind of you to say. One Italian to the other. I'll tell her you said that.
She keeps you straight.
She sure does.
Yeah. I miss my mother dearly. She died when she was 90, but you know, nothing like an Italian mother, okay, or a Polish mother.
God rest her soul. Exactly.
I mean, you have that tradition.
We are blessed.
So, Joe, a little bit about. I mean, I know who you are, but tell our viewers, you know, a little bit about you, your background, what you've done, etc.
Sure, be happy to. And thank you to your viewers for watching. I'm a local boy who was raised in Scranton. My dad was the 17th child of immigrant parents and found his way along to become the mayor of Scranton. You know, and only in this country can that happen. So I was a proud young boy watching my dad lead a city, you know, a family that came from nothing. And he was a very popular two-term mayor, a Republican in a 3-to-1 Democratic city, and that said something to me about how you serve all the people of your community. And I think that inspired me to go on, and I wanted to be a police officer to serve the citizens the same way that my dad did. And I worked as a Scranton police officer. My dad wouldn't hire me. He said that would be nepotism, so I had to wait and take the test under the next mayor. But that taught me a lesson too, Sam, about doing the right thing. And after being a police officer, I decided to go to law school. I went to the Dickinson School of Law in Carlisle here in Pennsylvania. And I went on to be a drug prosecutor for the State Attorney General's office and stayed there a total of about 17 years and rose to become the state's top drug prosecutor. And I was also the chief of police of the state's undercover narcotics agents, the Bureau of Narcotics Investigations. And then I went on from there to the U.S. Justice Department, was asked to be a special mafia prosecutor, and was part of the team proudly that convicted Philadelphia mafia boss Little Nicky Scarfo and his underboss and 15 others for 9 murders, including of a judge, drug trafficking, bribery, all of the horrific crimes that a crime family tries to do when they take over a city. I was then asked to work in 2 White Houses, and I was honored by that because it wasn't about politics. They were presidents of 2 different parties. But I was asked by a 4-star general, Barry McCaffrey, who became the drug czar, to become his deputy for law enforcement matters and community matters, working with cities and states. So I spent 2 years in the Clinton White House under General McCaffrey as what's called a career, not a political appointee. And then the George W. Bush administration asked me to stay on as a deputy drug czar, but also to work with Tom Ridge, our former governor, who had come down to Washington to be the director of Homeland Security. So my work over the last years has been focused on the drug problem and the terrorism problem. And I also do TV commentary in addition to enjoying sitting with you. No, I couldn't do it as well as you. And you're better looking too.
No, thank you.
I do some commentary for WNEP, and I've done it for WBRE and the Fox News channel. I was on Fox about 2 weeks ago to talk about President Trump's agenda and some other matters.
Before I get to the agenda, okay, which I find interesting, is that what did you learn as a deputy drug czar? What did you learn with the 2 administrations? Were there any difference in the direction they were taking, or
That's a very interesting question you ask, because people would assume because they were different administrations, they would be diametrically opposed. You know what, Sam? Refreshingly, they were not. One of the projects that I shepherded was something called the drug court program, which nobody knew about back then. Now it proliferates, and there are drug courts here in Luzerne County and in Lackawanna County and in all of the counties in this district. And the innovation in that program was to bring people together that otherwise would have been fighting each other. For instance, at this table was a judge, was a prosecutor, a police officer, the defense attorney, the treatment specialist, the probation and parole person, someone who could do jobs training, because it was an opportunity to deal with this drug issue in a holistic way and to deal with the violent street gangs who are peddling this poison. And I know how to do that as a cop and a chief and a prosecutor. But it was also recognizing that someone who gets to the point of being a drug addict, not to excuse their behavior getting there, but once they're there, we find them as a health problem, not a law enforcement problem. We don't need them crowding the jails. The cops don't want them in the jails more than anybody else, because jails are for the violent predators. Treatment is the answer for someone who's addicted, so that we can help them get through it, manage it, and lead a productive life again. You know, when you look at the drug problem, you don't always get rid of it in terms of an addiction, but if you can manage it, if you could take that single mom who's struggling to raise her kids in the city of Hazleton, let's say, and you can diminish her drug-taking behavior, 50%, let's say, she's going to be a better mom 50% of the time. She's going to miss work 50% less of the time. She's going to be not in the emergency room 50% of the time. So that was one example of how you, if you know the problem, if you've lived it as I have, from all of those perspectives, answering your question about, you know, what does a deputy drug czar do? And that's what I will bring to the Congress.
So, Joe, my question is then, that was back how many years ago when you...
That was in the early 2000s.
Okay, so we knew then,
yes, sir,
the concern for health.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I know many commissioners that in the state of Pennsylvania have been on the show many years and talked about the same thing. Then why didn't the government, or why didn't they pursue with that in giving grants or money to the states for health problems, so we wouldn't have this crisis that we have now?
You know what happened, Sam? That program, in going back to your original comment, how were the administrations different? That program was funded equally by both administrations because they saw the value. But then what happened was the drug problem changed. And what do we have today? This horrible heroin opioid crisis. And then you have this drug called fentanyl, which is way more powerful than heroin, mixed in, and people don't know it, and they're dying from overdoses. And when I say the drug problem changed, when I was a street cop carrying a gun and a badge and working undercover, nobody wanted to be a heroin user, because the image, which kind of was a deterrent of somebody in an alley with a needle in their arm and destitute and homeless, nobody wanted to be that. Today, the problem is different, because what puts us on the road to heroin are legitimate pharmaceuticals. How ironic. That bottle in the medicine cabinet that the kids think is a good thing because a doctor gave it to mom and dad, that through overprescription, mostly unintentionally by physicians because they were duped by the pharma companies. But you know, the woman who has a root canal and the dentist gives her 60 Percocets, or the high school wrestler hurts his back and he gets 30 Oxycontins. You don't need them. You know, now we say to the doctors, give them 6 strong pills and then call them in 2 days to see how they're doing. Don't just give them those pills, because those pills deliver you to addiction. When those pills run out, you're doctor shopping to try and get more pills, yes, and then you're buying them on the street, sure, and your money runs out. Guess what? You're delivered to that $10 bag of heroin.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
Know, we keep on hearing about the problem, and then, you know, you have, you know, the politicians, especially when it's a runner for office. And I'm not saying you, Joe, but I'm saying, you know, you have Wolf, you know, now all of a sudden he's doing a lot of things.
Right.
Where was he before? I don't know. Okay, but you see, then they dupe the public. They dupe, right, the public just for the vote, and then they forget about them. Okay. And I think that's why I'm begging people to vote the primaries, because they're disgusted, Joe.
They are.
Okay,
they are.
They get this.
And you need to put somebody in office, not somebody who's got a lot of money and wants to be a congressman, you know, so they move to Pennsylvania. I mean, one of my opponents, John Schrin, a fine man, but he's never even lived here. He decides from New Jersey he wants to be a congressman in Pennsylvania, you know, and moves into the Allentown area, which is not even this district. So he can't even vote for himself. Instead, and I say this humbly, you want a congressman like Joe Peters who knows the issues of the day. You know, you can't pick up that newspaper and not see an obituary of a young person. So you want somebody to go to Washington who knows not only about the law enforcement, but the treatment aspect as well, who's going to force insurance companies to provide the level of inpatient treatment so that we can deal with this addiction. You know, our insurance providers wouldn't dare say to us, we'll only give you 28 days of cancer treatment. Now would they? But we let them do that with this horrible disease, which ends only two ways: jail or a death certificate.
Speaking of that, okay, you know, running for office, what was your deciding point that you decided you wanted to run for U.S. Congress? I mean, you got a great career, you're doing extremely well, you know, so why?
I'm blessed. As I talk to people, and as they told me their issues, you know, people care less about all of these. You know, every candidate says, I want to create more jobs, we need better values, we need better health care. Well, no kidding. Who doesn't want that? But nobody, except this guy, is talking about the issues about which I heard from people in Hazleton, in Scranton, in Wilkes-Barre, in Nanticoke, you know, in the Back Mountain. Issues like the heroin opioid crisis. People would say, I'm concerned for my child.
Sure.
I'm concerned for my sister, those kinds of things. And then I would hear about, you know, our police being targeted for assassination. When I raised my hand to be a cop, I never imagined that it would be like a third world country where our cops would have a bullseye on them. Or the shooting in Las Vegas, for instance, the gentleman in the hotel, and I shouldn't even call him a gentleman, who kills people at random at a concert. You know what, Sam? Sadly, that could be at a stadium in Hazleton, or in Dallas, or in Scranton. So hearing those issues, somebody said to me one time, you were built for this. You know, your life has taken you, unintended as it was, to a point where the issues of the day are really tailored to your background.
Folks, I'm talking to Joe Peters. He's running for Congress in the 8th Congressional District. And as I say all the time, please vote. But make sure you know about the candidates. Know who they are. Don't let anyone tell you how to vote. Make sure you know about the candidates, which leads me to, if you didn't download our app, SSP TV, search it, download it, because all the shows I've done, including the show I'm doing with Joe, all the candidates that I've interviewed are on this app, on the Sam Lesante Show. And if you have smart TV, just download YouTube, search SSP TV, subscribe. You can watch all the shows, including our news. JoePeters.com is his website. Getting back to, you know, when you're out there, okay, so they're telling you about the drug problem. What other concerns are your constituents talking about, Joe?
We're talking about terrorism. You know, terrorism used to be something that we didn't quite understand. It was happening in the Middle East. We don't need to worry about it. Guess what? Fast forward, now the terrorist is homegrown. He's the young guy, typically, who's destitute and sad and hapless and not focused, and in his basement at night of his parents' house, self-radicalizing, looking at these videos from ISIS and Al-Qaeda and seeing the guns and the trucks. It was the same attraction that brought young gang members years ago to street gangs. They want to belong to something. They want something romantic and interesting. But their mind gets twisted, and they go on a mission, and now it's not about a foreign force coming here. It's about one of our own who's been radicalized, who is like a bomb with a brain, who is going to, you know, get a gun, or he's going to go buy some explosive components. He's going to walk to the Viewmont Mall. He's going to walk to the mall here in the Wyoming Valley. He's going to go to a stadium, a movie theater. And if he doesn't see enough victims or too many police, he's going to go home and wait for another day. So people are scared, and they should be. So that's another huge concern. And then one of my real priorities, and maybe because cops see themselves as brothers and sisters with soldiers, has been the military. You know, I've worked with the military all my life. I've never been a soldier, but we do the same work, foreign and domestic, cops and soldiers. And when I was in the White House, you know, I worked under a 4-star general. And our military needs so much. Number one, We don't care for the military families at home when the soldier is deployed. Number two, PTSD. It's a silent killer. And rather than waiting for a soldier to come home, let's identify it in country when they're fighting and deal with it there rather than let them bring it home when it's so hard to deal with. 22 vets a day, Sam, are committing suicide, which is unthinkable. And I carry something with me all the time. It was given to me by a beautiful family. They're a Gold Star family. This is their coin because they lost their son, Specialist Michael Wargo, right here in Carbon County. They're not even from my district. But I met them and we've sat for hours and talked about PTSD and the loss of their son. So working to provide our vets the care that they deserve is something that I will fight for every day. Lastly, there's no reason that all of our vets can't have a card, just like our seniors, and deservedly so, have a Medicare or Medicaid card, where they should be able to go, instead of waiting in line at the VA, to any doctor, any day, at any time, and get the care they deserve.
Amen to that. Speaking of that, looking at Trump's agenda, okay, how do you stand with his total agenda?
I am a supporter and a strong supporter of President Trump. I think he wants to drain the swamp. He talks about that. I am totally in favor of that, and that's another reason I want to go to Congress. You know, we have a slogan, let's send a cop to Congress. Part of that message is, let's send somebody to Congress who will clean it up. You know, I am beholden to nobody. You can't be a street cop, a state chief, a mafia prosecutor, and work in 2 White Houses on drugs and terrorism without doing the right thing and being your own man. So I answer to nobody. You won't see any PACs contributing to my campaign, so nobody's going to force me to vote a certain way. I'm a disruptor in a positive way. I'm not going to be told how to vote. I'm going to vote for my constituents. And on things like the border, I'm a strong proponent of a border wall. There's no nation in this world that doesn't control its own border. It's an obligation we have to our citizens. And unless we have lawful immigration, it is a slight to all of the good immigrant families who, like in this community in Hazleton, and in all of Luzerne County and Lackawanna County, who came here the right way, who want to continue being part of American life, but honoring their own traditions at the same time. If we let people walk across the border, not only are we exacerbating the guns and the drugs and the money laundering and the human trafficking of young girls, but a terrorist can walk right through, and we're not doing our job under the Constitution.
So here's always a concern. I've been here a long time, and I don't have all the answers, Joe. You know, I just try to think in my mind, okay, here is the president who, number one, has more people working ever in the country. He has more African Americans working than ever in the country. He has more Hispanic people working,
exactly.
And they're starting to feel proud about themselves. He has a moral value. He spoke at pro-life, one of the very few presidents that have done that. And he is now bringing a lot of peace and, you know, hopefully working. Everything he is doing is for the betterment of our country. Now, I just read the Drudge Report today, and 90% of the coverage that he gets is negative. And he's still at 51% approval rate, which means I think it's a lot higher. Right. So not that he's a Democrat, Republican. What I can't understand is, and I call them the wacko liberals, how is it continuously the wacko liberals, that CNN and MSNBC, Jimmy Fallon, you know, Jimmy Kimmel, and this other goof from CBS, Colbert, I mean, these guys, they just keep hammering this guy. I mean, Carson used to do that, Jalen, but they were balanced, okay?
They were.
I can't even watch them anymore because they're so disgusting, Joe. You know, they're so, and most of them are Catholics. If they're Catholic, they got to be pro-life. They don't understand what the other team is doing. It just blows my mind. Am I nuts or what?
No, you're not. You're not. And that is, those people that you mentioned are the fabric of this country. You know, and whether you, I mean the good fabric in terms of, you know, Hispanic community, the African American community, the ethnic communities we have. It's unlike any other area where we're proud of our traditions and we celebrate them at the same time while integrating into this country. You know, I'm pro-life. I'm pro-Second Amendment. Even when I had run for office before, I was given an A rating by the NRA. So I get those conservative family issues, and I think this president is trying to do the right thing for the average person. You know, you mentioned about Hispanic employment and African American employment being up. Yeah. It is because there's someone who cares for the regular people of America, and we're among them, and that's why I support this president.
Any conservative-minded person who is going to run for office, be prepared for the liberal press, and why they do this, I have no idea. They see the success. 401ks are doing well. Seniors are starting to be, you know, and veterans, okay, in your support. They're going to, you know, get prepared for an onslaught of the wacko liberals coming after you.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2.5 weeks ago, I got a call from the Fox News channel, and I appear on the Fox News channel talking about the issues that we're talking about. And they said, would you be willing to come to New York and be here at 6 in the morning to defend President Trump? And I said, I'll be there. Because I've done that before on Fox and other places, defending his positions and his policies to help America and to keep America and make it even greater.
We got about maybe 6 minutes left, Joe, on the show, and again, this is an interesting race because we had the other candidates, your opponents, on. Sure. Some of the issues that you feel, you know, that you're going to be able to look at, because you're going to be like Barletta. He went down there, he had to fight all these people, and he's continuing to fight them, okay? And he, thank God he was able to go through like Trump. He listened, didn't listen, he just did what he had to do, and he did a great job. And a lot of wacko liberals don't like that, okay? Right. I for the sake of me, I have no idea, you know, it just blows my mind. Anyway, some of the major concerns, Joe, that you want to bring down to Washington that you feel will help your constituents, because every congressional district has different concerns. What are your concerns here for the 8th congressional district?
I think taking the issues that I listen to learn from our constituents here, the nice part is I am one of us. You know, I'm not a Wall Street banker from New Jersey. I know, we mentioned the fabric of this community. I've lived it. People know me. So I'm going to bring the issues, some of them we've talked about, the heroin opioid crisis, you know, school shootings, which shake the minds of parents that could happen, the homegrown terrorist who would do us harm, the police assassinations, work for our veterans, and our farm families. Let's not forget that agriculture is the most important industry in Pennsylvania, still the largest, but we're losing farm families every day because the inheritance tax. Want to hear absurdity? When you pass your farm to the next generation, you have to pay an inheritance tax. Now, some of it has been modified, but some of it is still there, which ends up often in a family having to sell part of the farm to be able to pay the taxes so their parents could give them the farm. You know, and we have over-regulation. If a tractor makes a ditch, and I say ditch because I'm just a farmer at heart and a gardener, and water accumulates in that ditch, they have to get an EPA permit because they're affecting waterways. It's crazy. We need to bring common sense to Washington. You know, after the Mafia case, the Associated Press, not my mom, not my dad, the Associated Press called me and my team of prosecutors the modern day untouchables. Wow. Because nobody could buy us. We were fearless. Wow. The mob wanted to kill me. It didn't let it stop me. So there's no lobbyist. There's no legislative leader in Washington who's going to scare me away from doing the right thing. And I'll remember that I answer to my constituents, not the other way around. Mm-hmm. So that's what I will bring to Washington.
My viewers, particularly seniors, I feel sorry for them around elections. I feel sorry for them a lot of times because I see people in the supermarkets counting their nickels and dimes and trying to pay, you know, et cetera, and then the abuse of the welfare system. Now, when you say that, people automatically think, well, you don't want to help poor people.
No, those that deserve help should be helped, but it's those that abuse it.
Yeah, and they break your heart because they worked all their lives. And I say, Joe, and I mean this sincerely, if you want to solve the world's problems, you get people like your father who have been, and my older uncles, and who have been around They have lived this. And then when they see the abuse, these people disrespecting the flag, and Trump comes and says, get that SO. I mean, then all of a sudden Trump's bad, but they're disrespecting those veterans.
How dare they? How dare they?
Yeah. It just breaks your heart.
Yeah. You know, and maybe you crystallized it better than I could say it. When people look at who they're going to vote for, again, there are 3 fine people running for office. Do you want somebody, John Schrin, who's never lived a day here, who doesn't live here now, who can't even vote for himself on election day because he lived in New Jersey his career and then just moved into Pennsylvania and not even into our district? Or do you want a hometown boy, someone who's grown up in this valley, someone who knows the struggles and the dreams and the challenges that people face in this community, someone whose father was a public servant, a mayor of one of our largest cities of Scranton, as a Republican for 2 terms in a 3-to-1 Democratic city? That says something. That same man who came to Wilkes-Barre during the 1972 flood and took over rescue operations because this city and this valley were underwater. And now my son, 3rd generation, just finished his last law school exam last night, but works in cutting engines out of heavy-duty abandoned trucks to reconfigure them. So works with his hands, goes to law school. That's the 3rd generation, my son Max, of people in our community who are proud and deserve leadership, and I ask them humbly to select Joe Peters as one of their own to represent them.
Well, there's a lot of major issues, and Joe, you know, you've heard it for many years, as I tell all the candidates. You know, there's a lot of, we hear lip service, and I'm not saying you or that you hear lip service, and here again, when you see the people that don't go and vote, they're disgusted. Right. Do you blame them? Right. I mean, when you hear that, and the liberal press, again, and I say that, I'm embarrassed because I'm in the media, okay? I'm really in the media, and people say, well, Sam, you're well, no, I'm just trying to be common sense. When a person does all these great things for us, why don't you give 90%, the Drudge Report today, 90% of the news coverage that they have on Trump is negative, yet he's 51% approval. I mean, you're going to be faced with that, Joe. You got about 2 minutes left. What do you want to tell our voters, again, why they should vote for Joe Peters?
John Schrin, a person from New Jersey, a Wall Street banker who has never lived here, can't even vote for himself on election day because he's not here, who told the Scranton Times and the Citizen's Voice, I'll move into the area after the voters elect me. It's unthinkable. Or do you want someone who has grown up here, has been part of the fabric of this community, who wants to fight for you, who will always answer to you, who is a proven public servant as a cop and a prosecutor and working in the White House and around the world on the issues that affect us. I want to be your congressman. I can't do it without you. I ask you humbly to vote for Joe Peters on May 15th.
Well, Joe, as I tell all the candidates that come on the show, they all have some great stories. I wish you and everyone all the very best.
Thank you, sir.
I admire anyone who runs for office today, particularly if you're conservative and you're pro-life and you're for everything that the country needs, and yet we get hammered with, you know, the people who are trying to just destroy family life, etc., etc. I wish all of you the very best.
I'll keep fighting, and I thank you so much, and your viewers, Sam, and best to your family.
Thank you. JoePeters.com, folks, is the website, JoePeters.com. Learn as much as you can about all the candidates, as I said, but please vote. Please vote May 15th. It's so critical. We'll see you next time.